Okay, now we're going to add an apple to our scene. So we've got here in the actors the target, which we're going to drag onto the hierarchy and drop it there. And there it is. We're going to rename it something simpler. As it's an apple, we'll rename it as Apple. Okay, that's good. Now, the apple's on the screen, it's in the middle, but we can't see it. And the reason why we can't see it is, if you remember, about the sorting layers. It's on the default sorting layer, and which is at the back, so we'll need to move it to Action, and then it appears beyond in front. We can just about see the apple there, but it's a bit weedy, isn't it? So I'm going to double click on Apple in the main scene here, and it'll zoom in on us. Right, okay, it's a bit too small, so I'm going to enlarge it a little bit to fit in. So we can go straight to the transform and the scale option. I'll just scale it up by 1.8 on the x-axis and the same on the y-axis. Remember, the z-axis is irrelevant on a 2D game. Right, so it's about the right size now, but it's in the wrong position. Right, so I want to move it up to the top of the screen here, and we've got a number of tools that will help us to do that, and here they are at the top. The one it's on at the moment is really a scale tool. We can move it like that, and we can sort of rotate it, but we're going to use this tool here, which is the 4-way arrows, which enables us to move things along the vertical or the horizontal axis. So I can also zoom out, and we can still see those arrows. Okay, I'm going to move the arrow directly up to the screen, and there it is. Okay, in place. We can also directly change the transform if we want to do it that way. Right, we're going to actually test the game now. I'm going to save it first. It's always a good idea to save regularly. So right click here and click on Save Scene. Okay, the asterisk disappears, which shows we've saved it. Okay. Now, down here, we're going to put this on, so maximize on play on. So when we test the game using these tools up here, I'm just going to change this, I'll explain that later, and just click the play button. It takes a little while, and eventually the game should appear. So there it is, and notice that it's blue and nothing's happening. Not really surprising, because we haven't actually made anything happen. So let's click back on the play button to return to the editor. Okay, here we are. Now Unity is a fully fledged game engine, and it has its own gravity built in, and to make gravity apply to an object we need to add a rigid body to it. Okay, so we've got the apple, and we're going to add a component. Now there are two options here, physics and physics 2D. Okay, physics is used for 3D objects, and the physics 2D is specifically for 2D objects. And we've got rigid body 2D. Okay, we're going to add that to it. So just click on that, and we've got a rigid body 2D in here. Okay, and this allows gravity to affect it. Right. So now if I try playing the game, testing it out, we should see the apple falls under the Unity gravity, and it keeps falling, in fact, forever. So if we just take off the maximize on play and then just test it again, we can see the apple falling, And indeed it keeps falling. It's falling now. It'll fall forever as long as the game is running. We don't really want that to happen. We want it to stop. Okay, so what we're going to do for that... well, let's just have a look at this gravity scale first. Under games like this, quite often things fall slower than normal. So if we change this gravity scale from 1 to say 0.5, then the apple falls, but it falls a lot slower. Right, we can, if you like, change it to a negative value. So if we have a look at that and then just put a minus 0.5, can you guess what will happen if we try the game now? There it goes. We've invented anti-gravity in the Unity world. Okay, let's put it back to 0.5. Now, you can alter the difficulty of this game by changing the gravity scale. So if you want to make it more difficult, make the apples fall faster. Easier, make them fall slower. Okay, we'll just keep it at 0.5 just for the moment and see how that works. Now, as I was saying before, we want the apple to bounce on the ground, not actually go on forever. And to do that, we need to create a ground for it. Right, so what I'm going to do here is to create a new game object. So if we go up to the create, I'm just going to create an empty object and rename it as ground. So just click on it and rename it. Now the ground has no actual physical existence in the game. It can't be seen. Okay? But we can add something to stop the apple going, and that's known as a collider. Okay, so in games, hitting things is a really important thing to be able to do. So I'm going to choose an edge collider here. Can't see it, even if I zoom in. But if I click on the Edit Collider button, you should see a little green line, and we've got a rectangle at one end. We'll pull that, and this marks our ground level, and the left hand side as well. Okay, I want to make sure this is completely horizontal, otherwise the apples will start rolling off it. So we take off the edit, and then we've got the points. That's not too bad, but I'm going to make them both exactly minus 4.6, and then we know that it's a horizontal line. And the same with the other end. Okay, so now we know it's completely flat. And we want the apple to fall on the ground. So it also needs a collider. So if we go back to the apple, and then we'll add another component. Again, physics 2D. And it's roughly circular, so we'll add a circle collider. It's very difficult to see at the moment because we've got the background interfering with that. So what we can do is just turn off the background. So if we select it, and notice this little checkbox here, if we take that off, it grays it out and it's disabled. So now you can see the collider on the apple. We'll just adjust that slightly. So again, edit collider, and I can just move in those scaling handles to fit the apple better. Okay, that'll do nicely. Okay, let's try it out again. Put the background back on first. we go. And we'll return to maximize on play. And let's try it out, and now we should see the apple will fall and the two colliders will hit and the apple will stop on the ground. Okay. It's a bit leaden though, isn't it? I'd expect an apple to bounce a little bit from such a height. So we're going to add some bounce to the apple, and to do that we'll need physics material. So let's make a folder for our physics materials. So back in the assets and then create a folder. We'll call it physics materials. Okay, so there's our new folder. It's empty, so select it, and then we'll create a new physics material. So again, we've got 3D or 2D. This is going to be a 2D one. Now, physics material controls the friction, so whether something is slippery or whether it's rough. Okay, and we've also got the bounciness. Now that goes between 0 and 1. So we only want a little bit of a bounce of an apple, so I'm going to put in 0.2. That should be just enough bounce. Okay. Now we need to assign that physics material to the apple. Let's just change its name to no bounce. Okay, so we'll go back to the apple, and in the collider, the circle collider, we should see, yeah, we've got a space for the material, which is expecting a physics material 2D. And there we've got one, so we just drag it from the asset folder into that box. Okay, we can also select it from this little target object here. We just click on that and it shows us all of the possible assets that would meet those requirements. Okay, so now it is a slightly bouncy apple. Let's try it again. There it goes, and it bounces just a little bit. That's ideal. Okay, next time we'll add a basket to catch the apples.